Hey y'all, my name is Jordan and welcome to or back to my channel. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe. In this video, I'm just gonna be answering all your questions on what you should do after you've gotten into law school. So we'll be talking about all things from housing to deciding on a school and maybe even a little bit of negotiation stuff. So yeah, without further ado, let's get on into the video.
Hi everybody, I'm Lexi. I'm a 2L at Howard University School of Law and I'm from St. Louis, Missouri.
Hi, I'm Mia. I'm a 2L at Howard University School of Law and I'm from New York and Massachusetts.
Hi, my name is Antonia James. I'm from Washington, D.C. too, and I go to UC Irvine School of Law in California, and I'm a 3L.
First question, how do you pay for your law school apartment? Is it covered by cost of attendance?
Once I get my refund check back through my loans, I'll pay it that way. I also live in university apartment housing, so the campus's own housing. I didn't have to go off campus, but I also have a scholarship if I needed to take the money out and get that to pay the rent. It's called the Herbert H. Denton Scholarship. They give you a good amount of money and you can actually decide when you want to use it and how you want to use it. So I saved up money from that scholarship to pay for my rent.
So at Hustle, there is no student housing, so you are kind of stuck off campus. I pay simply by using my refund. However, I will say I live with a roommate, so my rent is a lot cheaper. I know some people do have to pay out of pocket, and you should also save money to pay a couple months of rent by yourself, just because sometimes Hustle doesn't give the money on time, or sometimes it's just not enough. So I know over the summer, you should definitely make sure that you save some money so that you're not worrying about rent.
Yeah, so I pretty much do the same thing as Mia, except I don't have a roommate, so my rent is a little higher. Some people move further out from DC, live in Maryland and stuff, to get cheaper rent. But yeah, I think we should get way more money in DC for rent from Howard. The other schools here, AU, Georgetown, get almost double what we get to pay for housing, which makes sense because DC is so expensive. But yeah, so just keep that in mind if you're considering Howard.
Howard relies on you to live in Silver Spring. Yeah, or multiple roommates, and sometimes you don't want that.
Do you take out loans for your school, and is it a tedious or intimidating process? I think we all take out loans. I took however much they could give me. I took the maximum amount. I probably should be a bit more afraid, but I'm just it is what it is at this point. I have to get the degree. When will it be paid? Will it be paid? But it's a personal choice. I definitely did go in with the intention, I'm gonna get a job where I can pay it off. My first priority is nowhere near those student loans. I don't even think that's on my top 100 priorities right now. Okay, it is a big financial commitment, but that's just part of the game. I mean, you probably did that I did that for undergrad, so I was just oh, what's a few more hundred?
So I didn't take out any loans for undergrad. So when I was going to law school, and it's kind of don't feel bad if you don't get that, full right to law school, because a lot of people don't have it. So I was kind of nervous about taking out loans. But yeah, I just think I did it through FAFSA. UCI gave me kind of a scholarship, but nowhere near to cover it. And just as Jordan said, I'm not really worried about those loans. I know some people are I'm going to pay it off in this many years and I'm going to get rid of it. The money seems fake to me. I know that's bad to say, but I'm kind of just it's going to figure itself out. But I'm more, especially as a 3L, I'm like Jordan said, what was I going to do? I need the degree. So here I am.
It doesn't register to me that I owe loans. Like you said, it's not real to me. When I see my balance, I'm that seems like a made-up number, because how could I possibly owe that? However, if you're in big law, it won't be hard to pay off. And if you're in public interest, they usually have those programs where they get forgiven after a certain amount of time. If you're somewhere in the middle, your loan payment is still going to be manageable. So I don't really think there's much to worry about, unless, something bad happens down the line and maybe you're unable to work.
Law school was my first time actually having to do FAFSA by myself. I'm not claimed on my parents' taxes anymore, so I had to do that all alone. And that was kind of intimidating, but it was manageable. And I would just say to try to find someone else who's also applying with you, where you can ask last minute questions. I'm a 2L and I still have last minute FAFSA questions with people, because it is daunting. And sadly, the system is like that on purpose to just continue to create those barriers. So try not to get frustrated. Try to remember that it's supposed to be hard. And if it was easy, everyone would do it, but it's possible. We all did it, and you'll be fine as well.
If you go to public interest, there are those programs if you're in it for 10 years that you don't have to pay. That whole government thing, not to be negative about it. But it's very hard to get them to actually do that. Like, there's so much that goes into it. I actually talked to a couple lawyers who did that because I was like, oh yeah, like, you know, maybe if I go into public interest, I know if you stay in it for a certain amount of years, they erase your loans. And they would look at me. It was actually it was a Black lawyer, so I appreciated that. And they were like, you know, that's very hard to do. Like, it's not as upfront as you would think it is, which is very unfortunate because a lot of people go into those fields with that miscommunication. I just feel like there are a lot of flaws in the whole becoming and actually being a lawyer, attorney in the United States system, and that's definitely one of them.
I agree. One of the best things you can do is a lot of research and interviewing like someone who's in public interest so that you know the terms and conditions, like all the little things, because it's not just any public interest job either.
One last thing about like the big law statement Mia was saying, like, I guess it is easier to pay off your loans in big law, but you have to also like kind of keep in mind, some people really don't stay in big law for that long. Some people stay maybe 1 year, 2 years, 5 max if they can like hack it the whole time. So like, don't even go in with that mindset of like, oh, if I get big law, I'm automatically gonna pay it off. Like, it still takes a long time to get that stuff paid down. Personally, like, I'm not, because like I said, I don't know how long I'll last in big law, so I need to save as much personally versus giving my money to the government.
The government gonna flag this YouTube video.
For legal reasons, it's commentary.
How do you figure out housing?
Okay, so I'm out in California by myself. Like I said, I'm from DC, so it's not like I was able to like live at home. And then at the same time, I don't drive yet, so I knew I needed to be close to campus. Like, literally, it's probably a 10-minute walk from my apartment to the school. I wanted to live as close as possible. It's not even specifically for law students, it's all graduate students. So in my apartment, there are like PhD students and medical school students and whatever other schools they have. So I also live alone. At first, I used to have a roommate. She was crazy, which is why I live alone now.
So I also went to undergrad in DC, so I was kind of like already familiar with the area and like had a couple friends who like lived in various apartments, which I had been to. And since it was a pandemic and I like couldn't physically go tour these apartments, I kind of just had to remember like, oh, this friend's apartment was decent, like let me just try there. And so that's how I ended up here, and it was close to the school. So yeah, that commute, like Aunt was saying, like I didn't drive at the time, like I didn't have a car when I was starting 1L, so I needed as close as possible, and I'm not like a metro person.
I'd never been to DC, didn't know anything about it, so I went on apartments.com and things like that. I tried to do only like bigger apartment complexes because there's less of a chance that I'm getting scammed as opposed to, you know, renting a room or something like that from Facebook, whatever, what have you. And then I also did reach out to some of the upperclassmen and I asked them like, hey, have you heard anything negative about, you know, these lists of places? And they would tell me if they had rats or not. So that was kind of all I did. I also gambled because I figured that we would be remote a little longer. I didn't choose an apartment that was that close to campus. I think driving, it's 15 minutes or something like that, but I don't drive. So if my roommate isn't giving me a ride, I do take the metro, which is maybe like 45 minutes from my front step to my classroom.
How does the financial aid process work? As far as I know, like the majority of law schools, like they don't really consider need-based aid, and there's no aid. It's just loans that you will have to pay back. And the process works like after you get into school, I think you just fill out the FAFSA form. You put in like if you're going to live off campus or like all the FAFSA information, and you can take out however much you want to. Like most people probably just do the maximum and they give it to you. They never say, no, you can't get that, to me at least. They give me all of it. And from there, you have the hassle of just waiting really for that to hit, or like maybe it's just our school, but it's just like you have to just continue to communicate back and forth between the financial aid office and like making sure your FAFSA is up to date, maybe send it in like 8 times until they hit it. And then from there, the money will just go into your account. You'll get like a lump sum of money. And that's what you'll have to live off of. That's what you'll have to buy books with. That's what you'll have to pay rent, your food, you know, your new school fits, like your laptop, all that. and you just kind of have to make that last. I'll do a video soon about breaking down more of like the financial stuff, but that's pretty much the process for me at least.
Don't be like me and forget to actually negotiate your scholarship, because if you get a higher offer of scholarship somewhere else, you should always communicate with that school like, hey, I would really want to go here. Obviously more professional than that, but hey, I really want to go here. The school is offering me this. Can you match this? A lot of schools will at least try to.
If they're not willing to budge on the money, you can argue about the terms and conditions. So like with a lot of these conditional scholarships, they might require you to be at a certain rank or something like that. And you could be like, okay, well, like the same argument, I really want to go here. I'm worried about the money. And if you can't at least match this other scholarship, can you give me a better chance of keeping my scholarship?
What do you all think is better, a school that offers you more money or a school that is higher ranked? Personally, I would go with ranking or like the name of the school, but it just depends on what you want to do. I'm like a name person. That's how I chose like my undergrad and law school. Like I wanted a name that like carried weight just for networking purposes.
Like rank theoretically matters, but I think the argument would be better put as money versus opportunities, because even a lot of higher ranked schools that I got into, I looked at their employment stats and like what firms went there and what opportunity, like what were they known for, and like it wasn't much. So I was like, I'll stick to Howard, where I know the name carries weight, like Jordan said, and there's just more opportunities in general.
To some people, it would make sense to choose a lower ranked school that would be free for them if they're interested in like public interest. But if you're interested in like other opportunities, big law, you might choose rank. So you just have to really kind of weigh your options. And then some people factor in location and like a ton of other things.
I feel like for UCI, it might be the youngest law school right now. I think we're only like 12 or 13 years old. But the thing about UCI law is that it fascinates a lot of people. Like I've gone on different interviews and they always want to ask questions, because UCI law was created as like, okay, not your typical law school. Like they try to get rid of competition there. When it comes to money, if you're going to a very like unknown school, like people don't really know that much about it, employers will know that and kind of look at you kind of sus. So it'll be good for you that they gave you a lot of money, but in terms of getting a job, it could be harder. So I would definitely say that.
Do I need to be sure what field of law I want to go into before law school?
No, I thought I was going to do public interest or like something of that nature. Changed immediately when I actually found out what lawyers do in a courtroom. So I think it's really hard to really know what you want to do anyways before you actually try it.
Is party culture still prevalent in law school? And do people still have fun and balance their time? They still be partying? I still party.
I feel like I need to choose my words carefully. I don't go to a HBCU, so I don't know how it is in terms of the party lifestyle. Obviously, I think everybody has a bar review, which for us is like, Thursdays, go to a bar, everybody gets lit. But I'll just say this: they know how to go up.
I think a lot of students see the social aspect as self-care, so they do like going to happy hours, parties. And listen, if all of this is happening during the pandemic, I just know that it was like 30 times crazier before coronavirus hit. So never worry about the social life, because it will always be there. And to an extent, it's encouraged because you want to make sure that you're balanced, that yes, you're studying, but that no one wants a boring attorney. Like, get out there.
Okay, what do you all think are the top 5 factors to consider for a school? So we don't have to just list 5. Maybe we can just kind of popcorn and say like 1 to 2 that you think are important. My first one that comes to mind is location.
I would say opportunities.
Yeah, reputation, name brand.
I don't know how to put this in like one word, but UCI doesn't rank students. And that's one thing I really liked about it, because, well, they try at least to get rid of this competitive spirit amongst students.
Maybe camaraderie. I know I definitely asked a lot of law students from different places just what they felt their connection was to their peers, and if it was really competitive or if they did help each other. And I know at Howard they said, oh, like it's not that competitive. And now being at Howard, I do see that everyone's always trying to help. If you're getting cold called, someone will like try to slide you the answers. No one's too secretive about how they're writing their memos or their briefs. I think we definitely all help each other do our best so that we can all succeed, because there's enough opportunities for everybody, and the curve will be the curve. So
I mean, I've also heard the total opposite about Howard, so I think it just depends who you surround yourself with, but my experience has been that of Mia's description. But I think the grading system is something people should keep in mind. At most law schools and like some of the higher ranked schools, the lowest you can get is like a B minus, which, you know, going to law school, you're probably over a higher achiever anyway. So a B minus is probably like scaring you. But at Howard, you can fail, and someone has to fail. Every single class, multiple people have to fail. And that scared me, but I did know that coming in, and I was just like, I'm just going to take the risk. But that's something you should consider. I mean, it doesn't really make sense to me. You know, we are this Black school. We're supposed to be trying to make the world better for Black people. But at the end of the day, the curve is really brutal here. And for example, in our legal writing classes, only 3 people can get that A. So you can only imagine how, like, I think like
my grade went down. My raw grade was an A, and I got, like, the curve pushed me down into a B. And I remember, like, I won't say her name actually. My professor being like, you deserved more. I was like, why didn't you give me more then? Like, so I'm still salty.
It's rough, but I will say that employers, they know that our curve is pretty brutal, but just keep that in mind. Like, do you want to be at a school where, like, okay, as long as you're in the top half of the class, you're probably going to still get a big law job? Or do you want to be at a school where, like, you need to be like top 10%, top 20%, just to even get an interview? So that's something to consider. It's a personal choice, though.
I did not know about the curve coming into Howard. Like, I knew about like law school curves and like being graded against each other. I didn't know it was that bad here. In hindsight, that's something you really should consider, because like Mia said, people are supportive here and they'll like try to help you out. But the school itself fosters such a competitive environment that you're gonna feel it anyway. I don't know. I would much rather be at a school that didn't grade, but you know, that's a luxury.
A lot of these firms that are like, we only interview the top 10, shoot your shot anyways, because they say that to weed out the people that aren't, I guess, mentally strong enough to get through all of the competition. Because I shot my shot at everybody, and guess who they were still interviewing? Me. And I'm not in the top 10. Always take everything with a grain of salt, because you never know what doors are going to open for you regardless.
Did the horror stories about your law school administration, or horror stories about Howard's administration, like deter you or like affect you? And I feel like, I mean, clearly not that much because we still go there, but maybe we can talk about that.
I don't think it affected me at all. I was much more concerned with like the actual education. At the end of the day, I know that it's my teachers that are going to help me pass the bar, not administration. All they have to do is submit a form, and they will do it. That's the one thing they will do. As far as it goes to like the financial aid and stuff like that, I budgeted in advance. I kind of used the horror stories to just help me prepare for what I was going to be dealing with. So I paid rent, you know, months in advance, so I didn't have to worry about what if my refund came late. Other than that, like, you really don't interact with administration as much.
I didn't hear any horror stories about UCI.
I mean, you just got to make it work. I think part of the reason why I chose to go to HBCU for grad school is I knew like law school is way smaller. So I feel like undergrad, it would probably stress me out even more, but at the grad school level, not really, because like it's a small school. So you can really pull up on people, like they know you by name probably. Also, I think the mindset you kind of have to have with Howard is like, it's really gonna be okay. Like it's really just, it's gonna be handled. It might not be handled when you want it to be handled, but it's gonna happen. And you just really have to have, like Mia said, those internal deadlines and prepare yourself for it. You know, like, for example, it's probably not going to make sense to you now, but like pay January rent with your fall refund. Like, don't wait, you know, pay January rent with your refund. Like, you've been warned, basically. So don't act surprised.
For me, it was like, okay, this is a grad school, like a professional school. So they have to have some level of professionalism. Like the horror stories I hear about the undergrad and like things they're going through with like displaced housing. And like, I couldn't have dealt with that in like undergrad. But like, as far as the stuff we deal with at the law school, I feel like it's like not as bad in a sense. Like Mia said, you can prepare for it, you can kind of know. And like when you're in the trenches, it does feel bad. Like when the administration is just like doing these crazy things, like on top of us, we had a pandemic, and then you have like the administration like making these crazy decisions. Like, so it does get really annoying, but like, it's just kind of like something you have to get through. It's almost like a haze. Like all of law school is a haze. The administration is a haze. Like you just have to get through it, like, and graduate. Like that's all you can say. And like if you're not, I know people like who like dropped out of Howard or like went to a different school because they could not handle like the administration or like those various different things. So if you're that type of person where like it will really get to you to the point where like you can't like get your education, you can't like, you know, compartmentalize that, and like maybe you need to consider a different school or like not a HBCU or whatever it may be, because like that's just the reality of it.
Also, I think hustle teaches you how to ask for help. So I know I went to the upperclassmen and I went to other students and I was like, what all documents do I need for FAFSA? Because for whatever reason, Howard didn't give me just one big list with all the deadlines. And then I also ended up distributing it to other students. So I feel like your peers will definitely help you make sure that you're as prepared as you can be, because the worst thing is for administration to tell you that you're the reason you haven't gotten your refund check. So there's a lot of things that you can prepare for and a lot of things that you can try to offset so that you're not constantly upset with administration.
So our last question is going to be, how did you know which law school was right for you?
Just like how I chose to go to UCLA, I kind of just looked at my options and I picked one and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make the best out of it. So that's probably not the best way to look at everything in your life, especially such a big decision. Because I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna go here and take one day at a time. But UCI heard a lot of great things. Even my LSAT prep tutor talked very highly of UCI law. Whenever I talked to anyone about it, they had great things to say. For the most part, I feel like they were correct. I knew I didn't want to go to a school where I was going to feel, you know, stressed all the time with the competition and feel like everyone's out to get me and feel just terrible all the time. And so I thought, you know, one thing I could control where I went was like the weather. You know, California, UCI is pretty good. I'm like, at least if I'm going to be stressed, there could be good weather outside. I also looked up some of the professors for what I thought I wanted to do. UCI was pretty good at, you know, funneling lawyers into that career. So yeah, but I definitely would say don't just positive attitude your way into picking a law school, because that might not always work.
I kind of did the same thing. I looked at everywhere that I was accepted, and I honestly made this really crazy spreadsheet with like pros and cons, how much they were giving me, how much I'd end up taking out in loans over time. And like, I looked at their conditions for the scholarship and I was like, the likelihood that I'm going to lose the scholarship and then what will I do? But all in all, I went to USC for undergrad. So I really wanted to stay in LA. And it was between that school and Howard. And when I kind of talked to people about law school, everyone immediately was like, oh my God, like you need to go to Howard. You're going to have the best experience. And when I talked to other people about their law schools, it seemed like the best part of their law school experience was like Bolsa and like the other Black students. And I was like, so if all these other people are kind of like chasing that experience that they could get at Howard, why not just try it out? And also like, not to sound too crazy, but like I didn't want to be in a classroom with like a bunch of white men arguing about my rights. I didn't want to hear, you know, like I feel like you just get a more enriched education at Howard when you don't have to argue about whether something is racist or not, because we know it is. So you really get to look at the law more holistically, talk through different solutions, talk through how to, you know, change the system or like place a new system. So for me, it was definitely about what kind of education I was going to get. I knew that all of these schools would provide a great education, but I wanted something specific to me. And that being said, that's why I ended up choosing Howard. And I don't regret it. I would only go here again, probably.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I kind of looked at all the schools that I got into, and then I kind of like talked to different students at those schools, and then also alumni who went there, and like Howard kind of like just got the best reviews basically. And like everyone was saying like, you have to go there. Like, it was the best decision for me, like career wise. And that was like kind of like the main point for me, because at the end of the day, you're going to law school to get a job, to start a career. And for me, Howard just had the best outcomes. And so that's why I chose Howard, and I would choose them again reluctantly if I decided to go to law school again.
I actually have a whole video on my channel on why I chose Howard, so y'all can just check that out. But thank you all so much for the panel for doing this for us. I'll have all their info linked down below, and you can feel free to ask them any follow-up questions, and also leave us like more video suggestions. Sorry this video was mainly Howard, but that's just who I know. And yeah, anyway, again, thank you so much. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow all of us on Instagram and everything, and we'll see you all in the next one.